Commander Alan Wright stared at the report on his screen until the words blurred. His hands shook as he read it for the 5th time, hoping somehow the facts would change. They didn't. The colony on Proxima Centauri B was gone. All 30,000. Men, women, and children gone. Alan closed his eyes and saw them again. The farmers who had invited him to dinner during his last inspection. The school children who had asked him endless questions about Earth. The engineers who had worked day and night to build a home among the stars. All dead because the Galactic Concordat needed a more convenient path for their ships. Sir? His second-in-command, Lieutenant Samantha Jones, stood in the doorway of his office aboard the Earth Defense Fleet flagship. Her face was pale, everyone's. Waiting in the briefing room. Alan nodded and stood up. How do I tell them, Sam? How do I explain that 30,000 of our people were killed and the Concordat called it an unfortunate necessity? Sam's jaw tightened. You tell them the truth, sir. And then you tell them what we're going to do about it. The problem was Alan didn't know what they could do about it. Earth was just one world against hundreds in the Concordat. Humans were the newcomers, the simple species that had only achieved faster-than-light travel a century ago. The aliens had been kind enough to let humans join their grand alliance as workers, soldiers, and occasional scientific curiosities. In the briefing room, 20 officers sat in silence. They already knew. News traveled fast, even across light years. The Concordat has offered reparations, Alan said, his voice flat. 50 million credits. About half the value of the mining equipment that was destroyed. And the people? Captain, Greg Mitchell asked, his voice tight with anger. Apparently we breed quickly enough that our population losses aren't considered significant. Alan replied, the room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. They're going to get away with it, whispered Lieutenant Kelly Phillips. Just like they got away with taking our Mars terraforming technology? Just like they got away with restricting our colony rights? Just like they get away with everything? No one disagreed. Dr. Lisa Frost had dedicated her life to understanding alien biology. She believed that if humans could just communicate better, if they could find common ground with the other species, peace and cooperation would follow. 20 years of research, all aimed at building bridges. Now she stared at her assistant Kevin Diaz as he explained how those bridges had been burned. I found the access logs by accident, Kevin said, his young face creased with worry. Someone's been downloading all your research on human adaptive capabilities. They've taken everything, cellular regeneration studies, environmental adaptation, rates, genetic stress responses, everything. It has to be a mistake, Lisa said, though she didn't believe it. The Zaxxery are our research partners. Why would they— It's not just your lab, Kevin interrupted, sliding a tablet across the desk. It's happening everywhere. Beijing Institute, Moscow Center for Xenobiology, the Lunar Research Station, all reporting data breaches. All focused on human biology. Lisa scrolled through the reports, her heart sinking. Have you told anyone else? Kevin shook his head. Just you. But Dr. Frost, I found something else. I traced some of the data. The Zaxxery aren't just studying it. They're using it to develop something. He took a deep breath. I think they're creating bioweapons designed specifically to target humans. Lisa's world tilted sideways. The Zaxxery had been the first to welcome humans to the galactic community. Their ambassador had given speeches about brotherhood among the stars. She had shared meals with their scientists, exchanged holiday gifts, attended the naming ceremony for the child of her Zaxxery counterpart. Why? She whispered. Kevin's answer was simple and terrible. Because we're getting too good at things. Too fast. Too adaptable. The reports I found, they're scared of us. The emergency session of the United Earth Government filled the Grand Chamber in Geneva. Representatives from every human settlement, Earth, Mars, the Jovian moons, the asteroid colonies, and the now-destroyed Proxima colony, sat in stunned silence as they reviewed the evidence, not just the destruction of Proxima Centauri B, not just the bioweapon research. Everything. 100 years of subtle manipulation. Economic policies that kept human worlds dependent on Concordat trade. military restrictions that limited human defense capabilities, scientific collaborations that gave aliens access to human innovations while providing little in return. Ambassador Susan Miller had served as humanity's voice to the Concordat for 15 years. She was known for her patience, her willingness to compromise, her endless pursuit of peaceful solutions. Today, she looked different as she stood before the assembly. Her usual diplomatic smile was gone. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm but carried a new edge that made everyone sit up straighter. "For a century, we have been played for fools," she said. "We believed we were junior partners in a community of equals. We were wrong. We are livestock being managed." Screens around the chamber displayed classified documents, secret communications between Concordat species, and evidence gathered by human intelligence over decades. "The Proxima colony wasn't destroyed for a hyperspace lane," Miller continued. "It was destroyed as a test, to see how we would respond to a direct attack, to gauge whether we are ready for what they have planned for us." She revealed that the Concordat had been measuring humanity against what they called the threshold of concern, the point at which a species becomes advanced enough to potentially challenge the established order. "According to their latest assessment, we will cross that threshold within 5 years," Miller said. "Their recommendation, approved by the Concordat Inner Council last month, is the controlled reduction of human expansion potential." The room erupted in shouts and questions. Miller waited for quiet to return. "We have 3 options," she said. When she could be heard again, "We can submit and accept whatever limitations they impose. We can beg for mercy and hope they are kind masters, or we can show them exactly why they are right to fear us." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the representatives one by one. "I have spent my career seeking peace. I have defended the Concordat's actions to you and your actions to them. I have believed, truly believed, that cooperation was possible." Her voice grew softer, but somehow more intense. "I was wrong, and I will not make that mistake again." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in human history, every nation, every colony, every faction agreed on a course of action. As the session ended, Ambassador Miller stood once more to deliver the message that would soon be known across the galaxy. "We have endured. We have compromised. We have forgiven." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice never wavered. "No more." The message from Earth reached Admiral Frank Winters deep in the asteroid belt. He sat alone in his small office aboard what appeared to be a normal mining station. To any alien inspector, it would look like just another human operation extracting minerals from space rocks. They never bothered to look closely at such places. Why would they? Humans were just simple miners and workers. Frank opened a hidden panel beneath his desk and pressed his palm against the scanner. A soft blue light traced the lines of his hand. "Protocol Thermopylae is now active," he said quietly. The computer responded in a gentle female voice. "Verification required. Authorization code? Earth endures. Authorization accepted. Protocol Thermopylae is now active across all stations." Frank leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. 50 years of planning, of building in secret, of hiding humanity's true capabilities, all leading to this moment. Part of him had hoped this day would never come. But deep down, he had always known the aliens would push too far. Across the solar system, hidden bases suddenly came to life. Inside hollowed-out asteroids, beneath the clouds of Jupiter, in the dark craters of distant moons, lights turned on in facilities that officially did not exist. In each of these bases, men and women who had trained in secret received the same message. It was time. Chief Engineer Olivia Reyes floated in zero gravity inside a massive chamber hidden within Ceres. Around her, thousands of small silver spheres hung suspended in perfect formation. Each sphere contained a quantum entanglement node, a communication device that the Concordat believed was theoretically impossible. The aliens had their fancy communication networks that relied on hyperspace relays. They thought humans were limited to the same technology. They were wrong. "All nodes online," reported her assistant, Dale Kim. "Activation sequence running smoothly," Olivia nodded. "Send the test signal." Dale tapped several commands into his tablet. Signal sent. 1 second later, exactly 1 second. Not the minutes or hours that normal space communications would require, responses began appearing on their screens. Saturn base confirms. Mars deep installation confirms. Lunar command confirms. Neptune outpost confirms. One by one, every hidden human military installation across the solar system checked in. The quantum network was working perfectly. For the first time, human forces could coordinate instantly across vast distances without the Concordat knowing. Send. The final confirmation to Admiral Winters, Olivia said. The network is green. Dale looked up at her, his eyes reflecting the soft blue light of the quantum nodes. Do you think we can really do this? Stand against the entire Concordat? Olivia smiled slightly. They've spent 100 years underestimating us. That's their mistake, not ours. Deep beneath the lunar surface, Colonel Jack Peterson walked down a long white corridor. On either side were rows of sleep pods, each containing a man or woman who had volunteered for the Spartan program. These weren't genetically modified soldiers. The Concordat had forbidden such research for safety reasons. Instead, these were humans who had undergone years of specialized training and technological enhancement. Their bones were reinforced with carbon fiber. Their muscles were augmented with synthetic fibers. Their reaction times were boosted by neural implants. They were still human, just the very best that humans could be. Jack stopped beside one pod and looked down at the woman inside. Her name was Kate Ward. Before joining the program, she had been a teacher on Mars. Time to wake up. Lieutenant, he said softly. Across the facility, 500 sleep pods began their wake-up sequences simultaneously. Medical teams stood by, ready to help the Spartans through the disorientation of awakening after years of suspended animation. Jack's second-in-command, Major Dylan Brooks, approached with a tablet. All systems nominal, sir. The Spartans will be combat-ready within 6 hours. Any word from Earth? Dylan nodded. Ambassador Miller's speech has been broadcast across all human territories. The response has been ... intense. Angry? Jack asked. Relieved, Dylan corrected. People are saying it's about time we stood up for ourselves. Jack wasn't surprised. Humans had never been good at staying down when pushed. It was one of the things the aliens found most troubling about their species. The pod in front of him hissed open. Kate Ward's eyes fluttered, then opened fully. She focused on Jack's face. Is it time, sir? She asked, her voice slightly raspy from disuse. It's time, Lieutenant. How do you feel? Kate sat up slowly, rotating her shoulders and flexing her fingers, ready to show the Concordat why they should have left us alone. In a facility hidden beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Maria Garcia made final adjustments to the massive machine that dominated the central chamber. Project Aegis represented the pinnacle of human defensive technology, a planetary shield that could protect Earth from orbital bombardment. Power level stable at 98%, reported her chief technician, Ryan Foster. All emitters are aligned and ready. Maria nodded, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Begin the deployment sequence. Slow and steady, we don't want to give away the surprise just yet. Around the planet, hidden emitters began to power up. They remained inactive, but ready like a loaded gun waiting for someone to pull the trigger. The aliens had orbital weapons pointed at every major human city. They thought these weapons gave them control. They were about to learn differently. Maria's secure communicator beeped. It was a message from Admiral Winters. Package delivery in 12 hours. Be ready. She knew what that meant. In 12 hours, Ambassador Miller would deliver humanity's message to the Concordat. And when the aliens inevitably responded with threats and violence, humanity would be ready. Maria looked around at her team scientists and engineers who had worked in secret for years, knowing that their families and friends could never know what they did. They had sacrificed normal lives to prepare for this day. Now, that sacrifice would mean something. We should get some rest, she told them. Tomorrow will be a busy day. Ryan Foster looked up from his station. Do you think they'll try to hit us right away? Maria considered the question. The Zaxxori will. They've always been the most aggressive. The others might wait to see what happens. And we'll be ready for them, Ryan said with quiet confidence. Maria nodded. Yes, for the first time since we reached the stars, we'll be fighting on equal terms. As her team left to get some sleep, Maria stayed behind, watching the steady pulse of the Aegis core. The aliens had always seen humans as primitive, as lesser beings who should be grateful for whatever scraps fell from the Concordat's table. Tomorrow, that perception would change forever. Tomorrow, humanity would finally show its teeth. The Unity sphere hung in space like a giant pearl, rotating slowly against the backdrop of stars. Inside this massive space station, representatives from all 27 major galactic species maintained the governance of the Galactic Concordat. The central chamber was a wonder of alien architecture, with soaring ceilings and materials that seemed to shift colors with the changing light. Today, the chamber was filled for what most delegates expected to be a routine session. The main item on the agenda was a discussion of sanctions against Earth for what the Zaxxori had termed aggressive rhetoric. Most species viewed it as a minor matter. Humans were always complaining about something, after all. They would issue some mild sanctions, the humans would apologize, and everything would continue as normal. High Chancellor Vexcor of the Zaxxori Empire sat in his elevated position, his scaled skin gleaming under the chamber lights. As the most powerful member of the Concordat, the Zaxxori always took the lead in disciplining lesser species. The session will now begin, announced the moderator, a tall, willowy being from the Alluvian Collective. First item, the human situation. I believe Ambassador Miller of Earth is scheduled to appear and offer explanations for her government's recent communications. The massive doors at the end of the chamber slid open. Ambassador Susan Miller entered, followed by a small delegation of humans. The aliens noted with mild surprise that the humans were not dressed in their usual diplomatic attire. Instead, they wore simple dark uniforms without decoration or rank insignia. Susan walked to the center of the chamber and stood silently for a moment, looking around at the assembled aliens. When she spoke, her voice was calm and carried easily through the space. Representatives of the Concordat, I come before you today not to offer explanations or apologies, but to deliver a message from humanity. Vexcor shifted impatiently in his seat. Ambassador Miller, you are here to answer for your inflammatory remarks about the Proxima Centauri incident. The Concordat has been more than generous. The Concordat, Susan interrupted, has been... Nothing of the sort, a shocked murmur ran through the chamber. No one interrupted the Zaxxori High Chancellor. It simply wasn't done. Susan continued as if she hadn't noticed the reaction. For 100 years, humanity has been a member of this Concordat. For 100 years, we have followed your rules, accepted your limitations, and believed your promises of equality and partnership. She touched a small device on her wrist. Immediately, the large screens around the chamber lit up with images and documents. These are records from the Concordat's own databases, she said. Records that detail every betrayal, every manipulation, and every exploitation enacted against humanity since we joined your alliance. The aliens looked at the screens with growing unease. Some of the documents were classified at the highest levels. Many showed communications between Concordat species discussing humans in terms that ranged from dismissive to openly hostile. Most damning of all, Susan continued, is this? She touched her wrist device again, and new documents appeared on the screens. The Concordat's long-term plan for humanity. A plan to eventually eradicate us once our usefulness as laborers and scientific curiosities has ended. Vexcor rose from his seat, his scales darkening with anger. These are forgeries. This is outrageous. Guards, remove the human delegation immediately. But no guards came. Vexcor touched the control panel on his podium. Nothing happened. He tried again with growing panic. The station systems no longer respond to your commands, High Chancellor, Susan said quietly. In fact, they haven't truly responded to non-human commands for years. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates tried their own control panels and found them unresponsive. Some reached for communication devices, only to find them dead in their hands. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded the Illuvian moderator. Her usual calm shattered. Susan gestured to the humans who stood quietly around the edges of the chamber: maintenance workers, service personnel, and assistants who had been present all along, largely ignored by the aliens who considered such positions beneath their dignity. "We have been here all along," Susan explained. "Watching, learning, preparing, while you saw only what you expected to see: simple, primitive humans grateful for any attention from our betters. We were taking control of this station piece by piece." One of the service workers stepped forward. He was a middle-aged man who had been quietly maintaining the station's environmental systems for 15 years. No one had ever bothered to learn his name. "All critical systems are secure," he reported to Susan. "Communication blackout is in effect. No messages are leaving this station except the ones we want sent." Susan nodded her thanks, then turned back to the stunned aliens. "Don't worry, you're not prisoners. In fact, you're free to leave at any time. The shuttles are waiting. We just wanted to make sure you heard our message without distraction." Vexcor's voice was cold with fury. "This is an act of war, Ambassador. The Concordat will crush your species for this insolence." Susan smiled slightly. "You've been trying to crush us from the beginning, High Chancellor. You failed. And now you'll have to face us as equals, not as subjects." She walked slowly around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from each species. "Some of you have been decent to us. Some have even tried to help us within the constraints of the system. We remember who our friends are." Susan stopped directly in front of Vexcor. "We also remember who our enemies are," the High Chancellor hissed, softly, his clawed hands gripping the edge of his podium. "The Zaxxary Empire has 10,000 warships. Your planet will burn." "You're welcome to try," Susan replied evenly. "But first, I suggest you check in with your homeworld. You might find things have changed while we've been talking." On cue, the main screen of the chamber switched to a view of the Zaxxary homeworld. Orbiting the planet was a fleet of human ships that had appeared as if from nowhere. They weren't attacking. They were simply present, watching. Similar views appeared of other Concordat worlds. Everywhere, human ships had somehow arrived. "Undetected. How?" whispered a delegate from the Nixtari, a species known for their advanced sensor technology. "Our detection systems should have seen them coming from light years away." "We've learned a lot in 100 years, Susan said. "More than you gave us credit for." She walked back to the center of the chamber and addressed all the representatives. "One final time. As of this moment, humanity withdraws from the Concordat. We will defend ourselves. We will no longer be exploited. And you will all remember this day as the moment you realized how dangerously you have underestimated us." Susan turned to leave, then paused and looked back. "The station will return to your control in 1 hour. By then, our message will have reached every corner of the galaxy. Every species, even those you've tried to keep isolated from the wider community, will know what the Concordat truly is." She smiled slightly. "What happens next is up to you. Choose wisely." The human delegation followed Susan out of the chamber. The massive doors closed behind them with a soft hiss, leaving the Concordat representatives in stunned silence. After several long moments, a representative from the Trisari, one of the oldest species in the galaxy, spoke in a voice quavering. "With age, I have lived for 3 centuries, he said. "I have seen species rise and fall. I have witnessed wars and peace treaties, alliances and betrayals. But I have never seen anything quite like this." He looked around at his fellow representatives, his large eyes blinking slowly. "We have made a terrible mistake," he said, "and I fear we are about to pay for it." The message spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. On thousands of worlds, aliens watched their screens as Ambassador Miller's words echoed through space. Some reacted with fear, others with anger, and a surprising number with quiet approval, but the Concordat leadership was not ready to accept the new reality. Emergency meetings were called. Military forces were mobilized. The Zaxxary Empire, in particular, demanded immediate action to put the humans back in their place. Admiral Frank Winters sat in the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform. Around him, officers monitored incoming data from across the galaxy. The quantum entanglement network allowed them to see the Concordat's response in real time. "They're reacting exactly as we predicted," said his intelligence officer, Commander Diane Rivera. "The Zaxxary are mobilizing their main battle fleet. The Krell Dominion is taking a wait-and-see approach. The smaller powers are mostly staying neutral for now," Frank nodded. "And the demonstration? Ready to begin on your command, sir?" Frank took a deep breath. What they were about to do would change the galaxy forever. There would be no going back. "Execute Operation Lighthouse," he ordered. Commander Rivera sent the command through the quantum network. Across the galaxy, human operatives who had been waiting for this moment sprang into action on thousands of Concordat worlds. Something strange began to happen. Power grids shut down and restarted in perfect synchronization. Cities went dark for exactly 3 seconds, then lit up again. This happened once, twice, 3 times. Then the pattern changed. Some cities stayed dark while others remained lit, creating massive patterns visible from space. The patterns formed a simple message in Morse code, a human communication system. The aliens had never bothered to study. The message spelled a single word. Enough. On the Zaxxary homeworld. High Chancellor Vexcor watched in horror as the lights of his capital city blinked on and off without any input from the central control systems. It was happening everywhere on every Concordat world simultaneously. How are they doing this? He demanded of his chief scientist. How have they penetrated our systems? The scientist had no answer. The truth was too humiliating to admit. Humans had been maintaining the power systems on most Concordat worlds for decades. The work was considered too menial for the superior species to bother with. No one had thought the simple maintenance workers could be a security risk. It was a mistake. They would not make again. Vexcor's rage boiled over. "Prepare the Armada. We will make an example of Earth that no species will ever forget." Within hours, the pride of the Zaxxary Fleet 300 of their most powerful warships jumped into hyperspace, heading for the Sol system on Earth. Dr. Maria Garcia received the alert that the Zaxxary fleet was on its way. She wasn't surprised. The Zaxxary had always been the most aggressive species in the Concordat, the ones most determined to keep humans in their place. "How long until they arrive?" she asked her team. 4 hours at their current speed, replied Ryan Foster. "They're coming in hot." Maria nodded and opened a secure channel to Admiral Winters. "Project Aegis is ready, Admiral. Shield generators are at full capacity." "Good," Frank replied. "Let's hope we don't need them, but be prepared for anything." Maria knew it wasn't really a question of if, but when the Zaxxary would attack. It was just a matter of time. The Zaxxary fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. High Admiral Krevser, commander of the Armada, smiled in satisfaction as his sensors showed the human defenses. A few dozen small ships and some orbital platforms. Nothing that could stand against his mighty fleet. "Tactical analysis confirms the humans have no significant defensive capabilities," reported his second-in-command. "Their ships are small and lightly armed. This will be over quickly." Krevser nodded. "Send the demand for surrender. Tell them they have 1 hour to stand down all their forces and prepare for occupation. After that, we target their major cities." The message was sent. The response came almost immediately, but it wasn't what the Zaxxary expected. Instead of fear or pleas for mercy, a single human face appeared on their screens. It was Admiral Frank Winters. "Hi, Admiral Krevser," Frank said calmly. "I suggest you reconsider your actions. We have no desire for conflict, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." Krevser laughed. "With what? Your pathetic little ships? Your primitive weapons? The Zaxxary Empire has conquered species far more advanced than yours." Frank's expression didn't change. "This is your final warning, Admiral. Turn your fleet around now." "Or what?" Krevser sneered. "Or you'll find out exactly why you should have left us alone." The communication ended. Krevzer turned to his weapons officer. Target their largest orbital platform. Let's show them what real power looks like. The massive Zaxxery dreadnought, a ship 5 kilometers long and armed with the most powerful energy weapons in the galaxy, fired its main cannon at Earth's orbital defense platform. A beam of intense energy lanced across space, straight and true, and vanished just before it reached its target. What happened? Krevzer demanded. Why? Didn't it hit? Unknown, sir, the weapons officer replied, confusion in his voice. The beam just disappeared. Fire again, all weapons. The entire Zaxxery fleet opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams streaked toward Earth and its defenses. Each one vanished before reaching its target. On the defense platform, Admiral Winters watched calmly as the Zaxxery weapons proved useless against Dr. Garcia's shield technology. The aliens had never imagined that humans could develop something so advanced. Deploy the fleet, Frank ordered. Standard defensive pattern, no aggressive actions unless fired upon. The human ships moved into formation. They were smaller than Zaxxery vessels, but they were faster and more maneuverable. And they had one critical advantage. They knew exactly how Zaxxery ships operated. Humans had been serving as crew on alien vessels for generations, watching, learning, and planning. The Zaxxery ships moved to surround the human fleet, expecting an easy victory despite their weapons' malfunction. Instead, they found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Human ships seemed to anticipate their movements, always one step ahead. This is impossible, Krevzer shouted as another attack run failed. How are they predicting our tactics? The truth was simple but humiliating. Humans had been studying Zaxxery battle doctrine for decades. Every human ship captain knew exactly how a Zaxxery commander would think, exactly what moves they would make. It was like playing chess against someone who knew all your strategies in advance. After 2 hours of futile attempts to engage the human fleet, with his own ships taking increasing damage from precisely targeted human counterattacks, Krevzer was forced to make a decision he had never imagined possible. All ships withdraw to safe distance, he ordered, his voice hollow with disbelief. Cease fire and hold position. For the first time in the history of the Zaxxery Empire, its mighty fleet had failed to achieve victory. Not because they were outgunned, but because they had been out-hot by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly. The invincible Zaxxery armada had been fought to a standstill by human forces without a single human casualty. The day that humans finally snapped would indeed be a day no species would ever forget. 3 months passed since the day humans demonstrated their power to the galaxy. The initial shock had given way to a new reality. The Concordat, while still existing in name, had been forever changed. No longer could the dominant species simply dictate terms to the others. A new balance was forming, uncertain and fragile, but real. On a warm summer day in Iowa, a most unusual meeting took place. The farm belonged to Ben and Nancy Jones, who had grown corn and soybeans on this land for 30 years. Today, their simple wooden farmhouse hosted visitors from across the galaxy. Ben set another plate of freshly baked bread on the long table that had been set up in their backyard. Around the table sat representatives from 12 different species, including the Zaxxery, the Krell, and the Alluvian. They looked out of place against the backdrop of golden cornfields and blue sky, but they ate the human food with cautious curiosity. This substance butter is quite remarkable, said the Alluvian delegate, spreading more on her bread. So simple, yet so flavorful. Nancy smiled as she poured lemonade for a Krell diplomat whose armored exoskeleton made him look fearsome despite his gentle manners. My mother taught me how to make it fresh. The secret is in the churning time. This was not the formal diplomatic meeting that would come later. This was Ambassador Miller's idea to show the aliens how humans actually lived, not in grand halls or military bases, but in homes where people made food with their hands and sat together to share it. Why have you invited us here? Asked the Zaxxery representative. He was not Vexcor, who had been removed from power in the upheaval that followed. The failed attack on Earth. This was Tezran, a younger, more moderate voice in the Empire. Why not meet in your government centers? Ben, a man who had never left Earth and had only seen aliens on screens before today, answered simply, "Because you need to see who you were planning to destroy." The alien delegates fell silent, looking. Around at the farm, the fields, the simple house where family photos hung on walls and children's drawings were displayed proudly on the refrigerator. "We have made many mistakes," Tezrin admitted quietly. "We saw you as a problem to be managed, not as people with homes and families." Ambassador Miller, who sat at the end of the table, nodded. "That's why we're starting over." Not as master and servant, not as superior and inferior, but as neighbors who share this galaxy. As they ate, news came in from across the stars. The Zaxxari Empire was facing internal challenges as populations they had subjugated for centuries began to rise up, inspired by humanity's example. Several Zaxxari colony worlds had declared independence. The once mighty empire was fracturing from within. "Your people have caused great upheaval," Tezrin said, not with anger but with a sort of tired acceptance. "Not us," Miller corrected gently. "Your own actions caused this. We simply showed others that resistance was possible." Across the galaxy, smaller species that had long been ignored or exploited by the Concordat were reaching out to humanity. Not as subjects seeking a new master, but as potential allies who saw in humans a partner who understood what it meant to be. Underestimated. Admiral Frank Winters met with a delegation of military leaders from 6 different species aboard the Earth Defense Fleet flagship. They had come to see the ships that had held off the Zaxxari Armada. "Our vessels are not as powerful as the Zaxxari dreadnoughts," Frank explained as they toured the ship. "But we designed them to be fast and adaptable, just like us." A Nixtari admiral, her translucent skin shifting colors with her emotions, asked the question they all wanted answered. "Why did you prepare for war if you claimed to want peace?" Frank's answer was simple. "We prepared for war because you gave us no choice. We never wanted to fight. We wanted to be treated as equals." He showed them the fleet deployment plans, making it clear that human ships had been positioned to defend, not attack. "We never targeted civilian populations. We never threatened genocide. Even when we demonstrated our power, we chose to show restraint." The alien military leaders exchanged glances. In their long histories of interstellar conflict, restraint was not a quality they associated with power. This was something new to consider. Dr. Lisa Frost had found a new purpose after discovering the Zaxxari bioweapon program aimed at humans. Instead of retreating into anger, she established the Intraspecies Cooperation Initiative, dedicated to genuine scientific and cultural exchange. Her first partner in this endeavor was, surprisingly, a Zaxxari scientist named May Villor, who had secretly opposed his government's policies for years. "I studied your people's adaptability because I admired it," Mevler told Lisa as they worked together in her lab. "My superiors twisted my research into weapons, but that was never my intent," Lisa nodded. She had learned to be cautious, but also to recognize genuine allies. "Then help me show the galaxy what cooperation can achieve." Together they reached out to the Nixtari, a species that had been manipulated by the Concordat almost as extensively as humans. The Nixtari possessed unique insights into quantum physics that, combined with human innovation and Zaxxari biotechnology, opened new possibilities for solving problems that affected all species. "This is what we wanted all along," Lisa told her. Growing team of multi-species researchers. Not dominance, but partnership. 6 months after what was now being called Humanity's Stand, a new galactic assembly convened. Unlike the old Concordat, where power was concentrated among a few dominant species, this new body gave equal representation to all. The assembly met not on a grand space station, but in a simple circular building constructed on neutral ground. Previously uninhabited world that would belong to no single species. Ambassador Susan Miller addressed the first session. She looked out at the faces of beings from across the galaxy, some former enemies, some new allies, many still uncertain. What this new era would bring? "Remember this not as the day humans snapped," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, "but as the day we all began to truly see each other." Humanity doesn't seek dominance. We never did. We seek only respect and the right to determine our own destiny. And we extend that same right to all of you. She looked directly at the Zaxxery delegation. The era of exploitation is over. The era of cooperation begins today. As the assembly broke into discussion groups, Susan stepped outside for a moment of quiet. She looked up at the unfamiliar stars of this neutral world and thought about how far they had all come. A Tresari elder, one of the oldest beings in the galaxy, joined her. "You have changed everything," he said simply. Susan shook her head. "We just refused to accept the role you assigned us. And in doing so, you freed not just yourselves, but many others who had forgotten they could choose a different path." The ancient alien's eyes reflected the starlight. "I have lived long enough to see empires rise and fall, young human. But I think what comes next might actually be something new." Susan smiled. "That's what humans are good at, finding new paths forward." Together they walked back into the assembly chamber, where the future of the galaxy was being shaped one conversation at a time.